All right, here I am about to hit level 50 on Black Widow, my first level 50 character. For a couple of days, I haven't been able to get the grind on, I haven't been leveling up as much as I want to because I've been busy playing Among Us, which is a stupidly awesome game. But that's not what we're here to do today. Today, we're leveling up, okay? I'm going to spend quite a lot of time grinding, but I thought I'd finish off getting Black Widow to level 50. She's the character I focused on the most. And here I am in the harm room, leveling up. We should be very, very close to level 50. It wouldn't surprise me if I get it this wave or the next wave. And I thought it'd be cool just to go over all of her abilities, all of her upgrades, talk about which ones I think are best. That way you might have a more enjoyable experience leveling up Black Widow if you have like a better idea of what upgrades might be the way to go. Though, of course, I will mention that I am no expert. These are just my personal opinions based on my leveling process for the character. Oh my god, we were so close. All right, so I'm going to jump into this mission, hit level 50, and then reset my checkpoint. We'll go over some of her abilities. There we are, level 50. Oh, we get a new outfit? I heard rumors that there were level 50 outfits, and now I have seen it. Fantastic. All right, we'll use my last upgrade point. Yo, this looks really cool in game too. Nice. Any visual effects changes? No, I didn't expect so. But still, very cool. This is a new type of video for the channel. Any amount of support on it is greatly appreciated. I hope you enjoy this. This is definitely a change of pace for me. New subscribers help out the algorithm a lot, but if you are already a subscriber, leaving a like can be just as meaningful. I hope you enjoy. Okay, let's talk about Black Widow and all of her available upgrades now that I have her level 50. So Black Widow is very much a ranged character, and for her early upgrades, I would definitely highly recommend her ranged attack upgrades. Specifically, I think you want to focus on unlocking the different versions of her ranged attacks. I would say that her upgrades to like her default pistol actually aren't super important. On face value, they seem kind of interesting, right? Because you've got the charge up, which is like a 3-round burst, kind of nice. But I would highly recommend going for the high caliber shot and the fully auto. Both of these are incredibly useful for different reasons. So the high caliber shot, I don't have an example here because this is not exactly a training room, but for all the turrets that spawn during missions, these high caliber rounds are one shots to those turrets, with a couple exceptions. Generally, when it's not a one shot, you can charge up the full power of the high caliber and you will get a one shot, one kill on the turret, and it makes it really easy to clear out turrets, and that can kind of be like really useful utility for you. And then for larger targets that can't be comboed with like standard melee stuff or melee stuff, depending on what part of the world you're from, the full auto thing is freaking awesome because A, you can keep some distance away from that opponent, not a huge amount of distance, right? If you're trying to shoot someone really far away with your full auto, you're not going to hit most of the shots because of the way that the spread works. But if you're like a good distance away from your opponent, right? Let's say that this pillar is the opponent. If you're shooting here, you're going to avoid most of the attacks they do, unless, they jump at you, in which case, you should be able to react and dodge. But the real purpose of shooting somebody with the full auto weapon, it's not even necessarily the damage you get from it. It's that it usually sets up for a takedown, so you can heal off of that, which is really nice. So yeah, just to reiterate, for early upgrades, I definitely recommend going for the full auto shot and the high caliber shot and making sure that you max these out as quickly as possible. All of your ranged attack stuff is very, very valuable. On the right side of all of these upgrades here that are kind of, they're labeled defensive. I don't think any of them are necessarily important. Pick these up when you can type thing. None of them are going to significantly change your gameplay like we just talked about here with the full auto stuff. Like a really good example of how useless some of these can be. I say useless, and I don't mean that to necessarily be a bad thing. They're nice perks to have on your character, just they shouldn't be prioritized. So for example, Widow's line is, first of all, it's a nice pun on Widow's wine. I don't actually have a bar I can zip line off of here, but it just kind of creates like a little blast where you land, and it just doesn't do much. Like some percentage of the time you'll get like a use out of it, but it's very rare that the setup is going to be there for you where you can zip line off of something, or not zip line off of something, but like grappling hook over towards something and then land on something nearby that, the explosion or the blast actually does too much. For your melee stuff, I would say that all of this is relatively unimportant. Like you don't need to upgrade any of this early, though I do suggest upgrading Spinning Fury and Nightstick. Nightstick's combo, this heavy combo right here, is really nice. It's a nice way of applying some hit stun. It does a bit of damage, and I usually use it interchangeably just to set up for takedowns. You'll get the hang of what exactly I'm talking about once you have the upgrade. It's just kind of hard to describe. And then the spinning move that we just talked about is this thing, and it works really well on the drones that you see flying around in mid-combat. You can grappling hook to those drones just by, using your thumbsticks to aim at them and then pressing R2. And then as soon as you get on top of those drones, you do this spinning attack thing, and then they fall down to the ground, and then you can continue your combo from there. It's basically a free kill on the drones, so kind of like how you want high caliber to take out the turrets for free, you also simultaneously want this spinning triangle attack that I just went over, because it's basically a free kill on those drones. So yeah, just to recap that, you want to upgrade the different versions of her guns, and then you also want access to Spinning Fury and Nightstick. From there, you can kind of just upgrade how you want. I don't have any strong preferences for anything. Some of it is like nice utility, I guess, but I certainly wouldn't say any of this stuff here is required, and I certainly wouldn't prioritize too much of it. The Speciality page is actually really fun and exciting. I love this page. So the way the Speciality page works is it upgrades all of the core parts of your character. This page upgrades your support stuff, this page upgrades your assault stuff, this page upgrades your ultimate stuff, and this is your intrinsic ability stuff. So for your intrinsic ability stuff, it's mostly all really valuable upgrades. The smoke grenade is especially quite powerful, but I honestly wouldn't start getting any of the intrinsic upgrades until you're about like mid-level, let's say like 20 or level 30, just because those other things we talked about earlier on are probably a higher priority. But right after you unlock the different versions of the guns we talked about before, the full auto and the high caliber, I would say the next highest priority is unlocking the heroic charges, specifically for her assault ability, which is this thing. That thing is super, super powerful. It applies damage over time, and having more charges of it is always good. It's actually super nice for when you get like a larger target, like the big robots, stuff with lots of armor, something that's going to take you a while to kill. If you have multiple charges of this, you can just start off the fight by like throwing a bunch of them at that one big target. And then that one big target is just basically not even a threat anymore. You're going to be able to finish it off really quickly. That is certainly something I wish I upgraded earlier, getting the extra charges on that ability. Now let's go over the different upgrades you can do for each of these trees. So for Veil of Shadows, you had 3 different options. This gives you a 20% increase in damage while you're in Veil of Shadows. This increases the duration of Veil of Shadows and also increases your crit chance while you're in Veil of Shadows. And then the last option, the option that I've gone with, and I still think it might be the best option, is that enemies defeated while in Veil of Shadows have a 35% chance to drop heroic orbs, which helps generate more of your assault heroic ability, which is going to be very helpful in combat. I would say that this is a toss-up between Dark Thorn and Shadow Gifts. The 20% damage increase on Veil of Shadows is really nice, though Veil of Shadows doesn't last particularly long. It might be nice for taking down like one big target, but I would say for the most part that Shadow of Gifts is probably going to be more damage over time, though that calculation isn't exactly simple, so I don't know which is more damage over time. It would have to be mathed out. On this side of Veil of Shadows, we have Eclipse, which gives you an increased range of 30% on Veil of Shadows. I definitely think this is borderline useless. I definitely don't think you're ever going to need an increased range on Veil of Shadows. For the most part, you can pretty easily group up on your team and use Veil of Shadows. Increase the duration that teammates remain invisible after being cloaked by Veil of Shadows by 5 seconds. I don't know why I currently have that on, because I just think that this is the better option, which is Mortal Cloak. It increases the critical attack chance for teammates cloaked by Veil of Shadows. That does not apply to you, at least I don't think it does, but it's still just more damage, right? More damage equal more good, and the 2 pieces of utility that you could potentially get off of this ability or this ability are negligible compared to the 30% crit chance that you get on Mortal Cloak. Next up, we'll go over the Assault Heroic ability. This is probably my favorite ability that Black Widow has. For the first specialization, our 3 options are increase the range of the electric field caused by Widow's Bite by 35%, Taser Dart, which basically changes the ability. I didn't like the idea of changing the ability, though I haven't actually tried this. This might be better, though the way that I use the ability, I think the default version's probably better. And then Lightning Fist also dramatically changes the way the ability works, and I didn't want to do that based on the way that I play Black Widow. Though if you play Black Widow as a more melee-oriented character, I would say that this is probably the best ability, though I haven't messed around with trying to make Black Widow a melee character. I generally play around her ranged abilities. For her second specialization tree, we have quite a few options, though I think one is just objectively the best one. Widow's Bite inflicts 40% more stun damage, increasing the chance to stun enemies. That seems pretty good. Defeating at least one enemy with Widow's Bite will recharge 20% of the heroic energy for that ability. And then the last option is Lethal Bite, hold an additional charge of Widow's Bite. I would say that Lethal Bite is probably the best option here, though if you have to choose between Paralyzing Bite and this ability, I would say that this ability is probably better. The 20% increase on the heroic energy is probably pretty insane, though I haven't messed around with it. Intuitively, it just sounds like having an extra slot is probably better. To be honest, I actually haven't read through these ones yet, so you're going to get my live reactions to them. I've just kind of clicked them while leveling up. These were some of the last things that I upgraded, so bear with me. Increased damage of Widow's Bite while Power Surge is active by 20%. Increased damage for for staff attacks while overcharged. A 35% increase. Wow, that's pretty good. And defeating enemies while Power Surge is active has a 15% chance to drop regen packs. Oh, I remember why I selected this one is because I was having trouble with one particular mission and I wanted access to more health, and that's probably why I selected that. That doesn't actually seem too bad, because generally when you press your ultimate ability as Black Widow, you're immediately jumping into a big crowd and trying to do as much damage as possible, and getting access to some more health while you're standing in the line of fire might be good, though it's probably not the best option. I would say the best option is probably Galvanic Bite, which gives you that 20% increased damage on your Assault Heroic ability, which is just awesome. To be clear, you only get that while your ultimate is active, so it is something you need to keep in mind while you play. It's not something you're immediately going to be taking advantage of unless you keep that in mind. For her second specialization tree, we have an increased stun damage while Power Surge is active. What is the increase on that? 30%. That's pretty good. Extend the duration of Power Surge by 4 seconds. That's nice. Increase the damage resistance to 30% and reduce the severity to hit reactions for enemies. Indomitable or Kilowatt, I would say, is the best bet. The option I have on now is probably the worst one. Though 4 seconds is a lot of time. I think the way you want to use this ability anyway is just kind of popping it and doing as much damage as you can. The 4 additional seconds, I don't think is going to provide a lot of value. You're literally just trying to do burst damage anyway. Maybe it is okay. I think it's a really close decision between these last 3 here. I would probably recommend Power Grid for the vast majority of players, but I'm going to try out this increased stun damage for a little bit. I'll let you know. I'll update you in the comments which one I feel more strongly about once I've tried it out a bit more, but I won't be able to for this video, of course. And we got so many options on the mastery tree. I love options. This stuff is really, really cool. They've clearly put a ton of thought into trees like this, and it's awesome to see. So I'll go from left to right again. This is for her intrinsic ability. The options you're given here are relatively straightforward. All of this stuff only applies while you're overcharged, which is a part of her passive ability. You can either get an increase on all damage while overcharged by 5%. You can get increased damage by 10% on ranged attacks, or an increase on how much damage you do when you get critical attack damage. I think it's actually best to go with overcharge critical or possibly overcharge damage. I'm gonna go with overcharge damage. I think that's probably a little bit better. Oh, I have the wrong thing selected for this. This is absolutely the one I think you want to go with. Intrinsic charge, 15% increase on shadow ups meter. That's just the way to go. Seems like you have to go out of your way quite a bit to enjoy the benefits of this. The takedown charge thing, it's like, okay, whatever. I already get rewarded very heavily for getting takedowns, so there's not a lot of point for going for a takedown just to get this thing. When you get a takedown, you're already getting health back, you're already dealing damage, and you're already avoiding all of the damage around you that could otherwise be happening if you weren't mid takedown animation. It's not like you're asking for more things to reward you after you do a takedown. So I think the 15% increase on the shadow ups meter is just better. Overcharge specialization, recover 1 point of willpower when dealing damage when overcharged. Increase the delay by 1 second before intrinsic shadow ups energy begins to deplete after not attacking an enemy. Increase the rate at which heroic energy recharges while overcharged. I'm actually not a huge fan of that. I understand why I chose that option earlier, but I'm going to go ahead and change it up to efficiency or efficient overcharge. We have 3 different options when it comes to grenades, and honestly, I haven't tried out many of them. There's cluster grenade, hazard grenade, and proximity grenade. I've only tried cluster grenade. I'm going to try out hazard grenade for a little bit. Oh, sorry, proximity grenade, but I would certainly recommend cluster grenade. It seems pretty decent. It's got a nice area to it, but I think proximity grenade might be better, so I'm going to try that out. For grenade status, this is one you're probably going to change interchangeably if you are trying like really, really hard on a specific mission. It's just the different damage types you get out of your grenade. I'm not particularly interested in discussing like the benefits of any of these. I honestly don't think about this tree very much. Next is upgrades on your pistols, which is always fun. Extended magazines give you additional rounds, increase reload speed, and reduce shot recoil by 15%. I've never found the recoil to be dramatic on Black Widow in the first place, so I never felt like upgrading that. The additional shots in the mag seem like they seem negligent compared to the 15% reduction on reload speed. I've always stayed on reload speed though. I haven't tried out the additional rounds. All I would really want additional rounds for would be the full auto, and you only get 6 additional shots in the full auto, so it just doesn't really seem worth it when I could get a 15% reduction on all of my reloading. Increased stun damage while invisible by 15%. I don't think that's a huge buff. Increased range attack damage while invisible by 12%. I really like this. Oftentimes while I'm invisible, invisible, I'm throwing out range damage on something. Sometimes it's a turret, so it's not really, I'm not getting the value of that 12%. But sometimes I go invisible and I focus all of my damage on one big target, in which case I am getting a huge amount of damage, additional damage, I should say, from that 12%. And then increase all status damage while invisible by 20%. I wonder if that applies to your heroic ability, in which case I would say that this is probably better than the ranged damage. I actually think that would include your heroic abilities. If that is the case, I would say invisible status is probably better than invisible ranged. Extend invisibility granted from Veil of Shadows by 2 seconds. Heroic energy recharges 15% faster while invisible. Willpower regeneration at 1% while invisible. The increased duration is pretty good, and so is the heroic energy recharge. I'm actually gonna switch it up to the increased timer. That seems pretty good. Increases critical attack damage while invisible by 15%. That seems okay. Increases critical attack chance by 7% for range attacks while invisible. That seems pretty solid. I know 7% doesn't sound like a lot, but you got to remember, generally when you're invisible, what you're doing with Black Widow anyway, is you're full autoing. So each of these have an additional, whatever it was, I think 7%. Each of those have an additional 7%. So you're increasing your odds by quite a bit for each of these shots, right? And you can get out, what did I just do there? 3 clips. 3 clips of the full auto is 240 bullets. So 240 bullets, each of those are getting an additional 9% chance to crit. That seems pretty good. Oh, sorry, 7%. I still think that's pretty good. And the last one was increased damage from melee attacks by 20%, or critical damage. Yeah, I'm actually going to switch that up to critical range. That just seems better. Performing a takedown spawns an intrinsic orb. That's pretty good. Takedown specialization. Performing a takedown spawns a heroic orb or spawn a regen orb. I wouldn't take the regen now. The reason I wanted regen is because of the way that I was playing the game at that point. So I understand why I took that upgrade. And you might want to change this as you're leveling up, because there were some missions that were very, very difficult. So I had to have access to more healing. And that's probably why I went with the regen pack. I'm going to change this up to takedown spawns intrinsic orbs, because I've noticed I'm not hitting my intrinsic cap, or I'm not hitting that threshold very often. So that additional intrinsic orb might be very useful. But honestly, any of these options are probably good, and they all probably serve to help you in a pretty big way. Probably less so the healing once you get into higher levels. Increased critical attack damage from headshots by 20%, increased stun damage by 15%, and increased range attack damage by 10%. I have no idea why I don't have that enabled. Yeah, I have no idea why I don't have that enabled. That was, hello? I should have always had that on. That is just, wow, that is so much damage. 10% doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're shooting this often, you know, that 10% adds up real quick. And the last tree is increased damage from light combo finishes or heavy combo finishes by 25%. I would never do that. Very rarely am I using combo finishes. Increased critical attack damage while air juggling enemies by 15%. That sounds not very good. And light and heavy attacks boost the energy of overall heroic meters by 5%. I'd definitely go with that one for Black Widow specifically. Those 2 traits might be more powerful on somebody who's more melee oriented, but I think this is definitely the way to go, melee charge for Black Widow. So that's it. That is my look at Black Widow. I'm not going to go over any of her gear or anything like that, because I haven't spent a ton of time upgrading gear. I've just kind of been speedrunning missions. So there you go. There is Black Widow. Let me know what you think. Have you been enjoying Black Widow? Have you played much of Black Widow? Obviously, I chose her first to get to level 50 because I was enjoying her character the most throughout the game. So I'm excited to jump into my next character, which is probably going to be Iron Man. Yeah, let me know if you like this type of video. I really enjoyed making it, so I hope it's something that you enjoy. That way I can come back and do more of it. My name has been Bilbzy, and I'll be sure to catch you in the next video.